Well, you might be hearing about the dreaded S word across the Dakotas and Minnesota. And while, yes, that is possible over the course of next week, there's a lot of uncertainty that's going to go along with that. So we're going to break down the forecast, and I'm going to talk a little bit about just a word of advice, a word of caution about where you get your weather information from, because it's so important. And I'm going to show you why there can be just so much more to unpack and why you should really be careful of where you look for your weather information. Gosh, guys, it's driving me crazy. So I'm going to unpack. I'm going to unload a little bit to you here a little bit later on in the video. But before that, if you wouldn't mind hitting the thumbs up, hitting the like button down below, make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so already. And let's get into that forecast. So we're actually looking at a pretty mild weekend here. And actually, as we go into Friday and even Saturday, we've got this disturbance that's coming out of Canada, pushing down to the southeast. So going into Friday and actually probably persisting a little bit into Saturday as well, we're going to be looking at scattered areas of rain across the northeastern parts of Minnesota, mainly across the Arrowhead region. I think it's going to be probably too warm for more than anything than just rain. I don't think we're going to be looking for any type of a snow activity, but more so as we get into the weekend and that trough kind of scoots off to the east. We continue to have this ridge that builds over the area. We're looking at very mild temperatures going into the weekend. Actually, it's going to be very nice for the youth deer hunting opener across Minnesota here this weekend. So as we get into Friday afternoon, you can see those showers begin to move into north central parts of Minnesota and essentially sweep down to the southeast. Now, again, most of this really is going to stay in the Arrowhead region up in the northeastern parts of Minnesota, just kind of reaching the north central parts as well. But ultimately, that's really where most of the rain is going to stay. This is going into Friday night, and then as we get into Saturday morning, you can see some of that moisture just kind of lingers perhaps a little bit going into the morning hours before most of it is pretty much done as we get into the afternoon on Saturday. Now, as I said, we're not really expecting a whole lot in the way of precipitation accumulation, just maybe a tenth to perhaps some spotty areas of near a quarter inch possible with this little system as it moves on through. But like I said, not going to be a soaker by any means, but just a little bit of rain, a little bit of nuisance stuff going across Friday and into Saturday. And it's going to be just a bit breezy behind this cold front. We're going to have some northwest winds gusting probably 35, maybe an isolated 40 miles per hour going into Friday. Looks like those gusts are going to continue into the overnight hour Friday night and into Saturday morning with those winds building up across much of Minnesota. Again, northwesterly winds generally 35 to 40 miles per hour across the Minnesota, possibly into eastern portions of the Dakotas as well. And then as we get into Saturday night and Sunday, most of those winds should ultimately die off. So of course, Friday morning, we're starting off a little bit cold across the northeast. We have that low pressure dumbbelling around with all that cold air and that rain along with it, eventually going into Friday. So our lows are going to be near freezing across far northeastern parts of Minnesota. Otherwise, we're generally looking at 40s for morning lows for Friday. But look at these high temperatures for Friday, around 80 to even low 80s across South Dakota. We're looking at 60s across much of North Dakota, upper 70s down in southwestern parts of Minnesota. Of course, a little bit cooler air further to the northeast, where we're only looking at highs in the mid 40s. Saturday morning lows generally in the mid 30s in the far northeastern parts of Minnesota. Low to mid 30s in the northwestern parts of North Dakota as well, also possible. Otherwise, generally, we're going to be starting off the day in the 40s. Saturday's highs, not quite as warm, but still actually pretty nice for this time of year. We're looking at upper 40s across the far northeast Minnesota, closer to 60s across much of Minnesota. Generally in the 50s to maybe low 60s across North Dakota and Minnesota. Sunday morning lows, mid 30s up in the northeast and low 30s up in the far northwestern parts of North Dakota. Sunday's highs, we've got some 70s again across to South Dakota and perhaps even parts of North Dakota as well. Otherwise, we're generally looking at mid 50s to mid 60s with, of course, that little bit of cooler air further to the northeast, where we're going to be struggling to get to 50 for Sunday. But all in all, like I said, not too bad of a weekend. I mean, actually, that's looking pretty darn nice. And then Monday, things still look fairly certain at this point at the beginning of the week as to how this is all going to sort out. But generally, we're looking at a colder day on already starting on Monday, where we are having the high temperatures in the upper 30s to near 40 across the far northern parts of our area. And then as you get further south, you're starting to get into the mid 50s to near 60 down in the far southeast. But yeah, that colder air starts to work its way in. Now, as I said, for the most part, to start the week next week, most of the models agree we're going to be having this cold front beginning to sweep through our area. And of course, that's why we're looking at those cooler high temperatures for Monday already. And then along with it, we're probably going to be having some areas of rain, particularly across North Dakota and northern Minnesota to start off the day on Monday. And as that cold front continues to kind of slide east and just a little bit south, it's going to stretch some of that precip just a bit to where we're going to be having some of that rain move just into South Dakota, but ultimately remaining into northern parts of Minnesota as we get a little bit later in the day on Monday. Now notice this, we do have enough colder air starting to sink in that we've got some snow across Canada, and it's just a matter of where, when, how this is going to settle into our region. And thus begins my little PSA, my little rant, my little annoyance. That happens oftentimes, and I think it bugs me a little more across or during the winter months, just because I just take a lot of pride in my forecast, particularly over the winter. It's a art that a lot of people just don't have because they don't deal with the weather that we do up here in the North Country. So, man, I've seen people already that have taken one model and just latched onto it and said, there's a good possibility of snow across Minnesota. And yes, if you look at one model has been showing that on occasion, and I'll show you that here in a bit. There's been others that says, watch out. Hey, there's a big storm brewing, and they're talking about severe weather and all this stuff. And all this, people, all this is to generate views on YouTube. They are there to get clicks from you, and they're doing it in a way that's kind of sneaky. And then afterwards, they'll get you to watch, and they'll say, well, I did say it's a possibility. Well, geez, people, you know, if you do this operationally, like I have in the past, if you work for some sort of professional company and you want results and you want somebody to give you the right forecast, man, I can't come back and say, well, I did say maybe. No, you're going to want my professional and my honest opinion, right? I mean, gosh, this is hard enough to predict out beyond 5, 7, 10 days, even a lot of times. More what we can do is just give you a general outlook beyond that. And actually, I'm going to show you what we're looking at generally at the end of this video as well, as far as what we're looking at for the winter season as the National Weather Service has issued their little prediction here today. So I'll show you that as well. But that's generally really the best we can do. I say, heck, I have a hard enough time telling you what's going to happen 5 days out. I'm not going to be the one to tell you exactly how much snow you're going to get this winter. And that has been a title on a number of videos I've seen across YouTube. That just irks me because, gosh, let me tell you, this is going to be real hard, as I'm going to show you here in a little bit, just to see exactly what's going to happen even across the next 7 days. That's going to be difficult enough. So that's kind of my rant. Be careful where you're looking for your weather information, especially on YouTube. And even the news people are sometimes there to get the viewership, obviously. They're going to say their little buzzwords to get you to watch. And I don't want to be like that. I want to make sure you come to a place that you're going to trust, that you're going to want to get the best weather information. That's going to be here. So while I'm strapping to get 100, 200 views at a time, I'm not going to fall into the clickbait material, and I can promise you that. All right, that's the end of my rant. Let's get back to the forecast. So by Tuesday, most models have a fair agreement at this point that there should be some kind of rain across Minnesota, perhaps even a few thunderstorms across the far southeastern parts of Minnesota. I don't think at this point we're going to be looking at any type of severe weather. I think that's going to remain well south of our region. There's also this possibility that we'll have to just keep an eye on as we get into Tuesday morning and maybe a little bit into the afternoon hours. We've got this little system that's poking in that might bring a little bit of snow across western parts of North Dakota going into Tuesday. But ultimately beyond that, here's where the models really begin to go all over the place, is starting on Wednesday. Here is Wednesday morning, and I'm going to show you 3 different models. Now, this is the European model. You can see we've got high pressure moving into our area with some snow on the backside. We've got this low across the central plains, bringing some stormy activity across the region, across the Missouri Valley there. And then as we look at the Canadian model, boy, look at the difference there and how much more that brings in and just really starts to sag in that colder air, brings in way more chances of snow across our region, pushes that rain maybe just a little bit south, doesn't have it quite as robust as the European model. And then the American model, even different from the other ones. I mean, here it's got the snow way out here. It's got this big system out here and has some rain across Minnesota, across the upper Midwest. And that's just looking into Wednesday. Thursday, European model has some snow possibly moving into our area on the backside of a very strong cold front going into, this is Thursday. Then the Canadian model, again, has all this cold air already well into the New England states, pushing south. Not a whole lot of moisture back on the backside of this. And then the American model is really ramping up for just a huge, large storm, pulling up a whole ton of moisture, giving just a dousing of snow across Montana to start Thursday. Now, this is one of the models that one person put on video. They just went with this model and said, hey, look at this. This is a possibility. Drives me nuts. Look at the difference, people. Look at the difference in 3 different models. Not only that, but hold on, let me show you this. I'm going to show you is the difference in one model at one time frame. So this is Thursday morning, but we're going to be looking at different model runs. So this is a model run from, let's see, Monday night. Okay, here we are, we're Thursday night. Here's a Monday night run, and we're going to be pulling it into the current run. Now look at the differences just for this one timestamp for Thursday morning, the different solutions it gives run by run by run by run by run by run by run. It's all over the place. There's no continuancy. There's no cohesive thought there. This model is all over the place right now. All the models, once we get into Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they're all over the place. There's no consistency. And so that's kind of the stuff that drives me nuts. We can't grab onto anything with any certainty. So general, that word I can't say. We make it general, right? I don't know why I'm having just a hard time saying that. So we keep it simple. What do we know? There's going to be cold air moving into our region. All models agree at some point to some degree that cold air will be moving into our region. How deep, how far will it make it? It's looking pretty certain that central and western Dakotas will definitely see some colder air by the time we get into Thursday. And then by the time we get into Friday, it's looking like most of the area is going to be into that cold air, unless you go with this American model, and it still has a bunch of warm air. But nevertheless, ultimately what we can be sure on is we're going to be seeing a good amount of cold air being pushed into the Dakotas, possibly as far as into Minnesota as well. And we're going to be looking for the possibility of some accumulating snowfall. How much? Where? When? Guys, it's just the models are just too inconsistent to say. And just by showing you these 3 models here where it's painting the snow, I mean, guys, this is all over the place. I mean, we can't say for sure exactly how much or what we're going to get. I can just say it's going to get colder. Some areas probably are going to see some snow, at least, whether it be accumulating or not has yet to be seen. Now, the only thing I'll say beyond that is I can understand people going, but Brad, you're the meteorologist. just at least just give me some idea. Well, as I look at it right now, I think our best chance for seeing any type of snowfall, again, is going to be across northern Minnesota, northern parts of North Dakota, and then probably sagging down into southwestern parts of North Dakota, maybe reaching into northwestern parts of South Dakota. But ultimately, I think this is probably going to be, if I had to pick an area that's most likely to see some accumulating snowfall, right now I'd say that's probably our best chance as we go into the later part of next week. All right, one last thing. I said I was going to show you some of the graphics that the National Weather Service gave us here today regarding the possibility of precipitation and temperatures going into, I guess, winter, essentially. And here's our two different patterns. Here's our La Nina winters. So that's not what we're looking at. We are looking at El Nino. So we have this extended Pacific jet stream that sags to the south and is actually going to allow some warmer air into our region going into the winter months. So the National Weather Service going into December, January, February, here at the beginning of winter through the winter months, we're looking at slightly above average for our area, and precipitation wise generally average to below average as you get further to the north and west of our area. So we're going to be expecting above average temperatures and perhaps a little lower on the side of snow if everything works out the way it should as we look at this El Nino type of pattern. There you have it. There's my rant. We've got a nice weekend in store this weekend. The beginning of next week should actually be decent, okay-ish, and then it's going to slowly decline as we get especially into the later part of next week, the way it's looking, and then we'll just keep an eye on the possibility of some snow, and we'll keep you updated. So again, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below if you haven't done so already. That way you'll be notified. Also hit the bell button. That way you'll be notified when I've uploaded a video just like this. We'll keep you up to date with the latest with the winter weather, white stuff, that ugly garbage white snow crap that we're going to be talking about already. But here we are in October, and we got to talk about it. So I guess at least we're not looking at any major storm just yet. So, but keep it tuned here, and we'll keep you up to date if anything changes. All right, everybody. For Region Weather Live, I'm meteorologist Brad Warner, and everybody have a good day.